Let me briefly introduce myself. So I'm Davorka Begović. I come from Zagreb, Croatia, Balkan region. Um, my profession is musicology. I graduated musicology at the Zagreb Music Academy. If I may say, very traditional, conservative. I would even call it old-fashioned academy of sort. But luckily, I had some great professors at that academy. One of them is the most important academician, Nikša Gligo, who was an expert for the 20th century music in the whole region. Unfortunately, passed away a few months ago. And he gave me the passion for the contemporary music that we didn't really have the opportunity to learn a lot about it while we were studying. My job currently is, so I work as a sound curator, or if you like, experimental music concert promoter, organizer, producer. And I dedicated myself and my work to contemporary music. Maybe we could say more precisely experimental music. But that means, and that's taken in my case very wide. So it covers very different styles, genres, poetics, approaches. So it covers do-it-yourself instruments and approaches. It covers electronic music. It covers so-called composed and written music, sound art installations, noise, drone, ambiental music. So very different styles and composers' poetics. Currently, I work at KONTEJNER. It's the same in Croatian and in English. KONTEJNER is a contemporary art practice bureau. This is how it's called, Bureau of Contemporary Art Practices. It's an NGO, so non-government and non-profit organization from Zagreb, established in 2002. It's also a curatorial team, and the rest of the team comes mostly from the visual art background. Most of them are art historians, and they're busy with progressive and radical contemporary art practices. Field of their or our interests are mostly crossroads in between art and science, art and technology, and art and society. Questioning also a lot of society's taboos. And these fields are investigated through three most known and largest projects of our organization, and these are triennial festivals. One is Device Art, the other one is Touch Me Festival, and the third one, Experimental Bodies. You can imagine what Experimental Bodies relates to the art and society, Touch Me Festival to art and technology, and Device Art to art and science. KONTEJNER is one of the most prominent organizations in Croatia and runs festivals, but also a lot of artist residencies, workshops. Educational aspect of the organization is rather very important. Maybe to give you an example how important KONTEJNER became in the last 20 years is that KONTEJNER was the main producer of the Croatian pavilion at the Venice Biennial last year, which was kind of the huge also message, I would say, by the institutions in Croatia, that they gave this opportunity to a very small 5 people NGO to run such a huge project and to produce it. How I joined the team. Back then, in 2013, I was appointed as artistic director of the music program at the Student Cultural Center. And already there, I started being busy with the contemporary experimental practices. And I established a festival called Izlog suvremenog zvuka, which would in English be Showroom of Contemporary Sound. Here are the festival catalogs of all 6 editions, so I can give it, I mean, I only have 1 copy of each, but you can circulate if you are interested to see about the program. So maybe you can. And unfortunately, 2018, the right-wing government made some decisions that I disagreed and I decided to resign my position because of the political reasons. But at that time, exactly because of this festival, the Student Center became a member of one European project, which is not only the European project, but rather the European network of organizations being busy exactly with the contemporary music, ran by Paradiso and Sonic Acts from Amsterdam, and many important players from the European contemporary music scene. So the project leader said, okay, we don't want to lose Croatia. We understand and support your decision that you're resigning the position because of the political views and degradation of the culture in the student center. But if you like to continue, maybe we should just appoint another organization. And this is how I came and joined the team at KONTEJNER in 2019. One can see that I'm there a bit of a black sheep because I'm the only musicologist there, being busy with the music and not with the visual art, digital art, and these kind of stuff. But this also gave them opportunity to open up even more the field of their interest. So I brought in experimental music, sound art, and I focused exactly on that field, following also their path, being busy with the progressive and radical thoughts of artists and theoreticians and philosophers of current times. So yeah, I brought this Reimagine Europe network in. I brought some Erasmus Plus projects that are busy with the experimental sound for kids and teenagers. And this is also the moment when I decided to establish a new festival because I had to kill the first one. And the next one is called Gibanja. These are the catalogs, the brochures of the last edition that just happened in May this year. And I have a bunch of the copies. So if you're interested and you want to get in touch maybe with us later, you can easily keep one of those. But before speaking more about Gibanja and my activities as KONTEJNER and my programmation and curatorial approach, maybe it's a good moment for a short digression, because yeah, I have built Gibanja upon my previous experiences and this Izlog festival that I established 10 years ago. And I'm mentioning this festival because already then and there I established some of my curatorial approaches. I somehow learned my perspective and way of working, my attitudes, and so to say my curatorial credo or something like that. Although I'm trying constantly to question myself and to question my thoughts and trying to develop it further. If you take a look at the programs, you might already recognize how programmation is diversified. Already by looking at the names, it's pretty diversified in genres and styles, and this is the most often comment and reflection I get, especially by the international scenes, because usually, I guess you all know that music festivals are pretty, let's say, specialized in a way. So they focus either exclusively on experimental electronic music, or they support more academically rooted, written and composed music, or exclusively underground, punk-rooted experimentations and sonic investigations. And I had a feeling it's somehow unhealthy, especially for our local society. I felt that these very small communities are too hermetically closed. I felt that we live in a very eclectic time, and that we should, if we are curating, thinking about the curation and being busy with bringing something to the audience, we should maybe pay attention to that fact. So I understood that maybe merging those scenes together, we could all benefit from. So to give you maybe some examples, the programs of this Izlog festival usually covered student ensembles, established improvisers from the international scene, digital artists, audiovisual performances, some sound art installations. So very, very different voices. And what was another parallel to that very important thing for me was not to create any hierarchy in between those. Not to create a hierarchy in between the local and international audience, musicians and composers and creators and thinkers, not to build a hierarchy in between genres, but rather to create community gathering, to create a place where people can meet, exchange their thoughts, and maybe go home with some new ideas or conclusions or inspirations. I still do believe that this way we can learn one from each other, which I find very important. We can respect others. We can learn and understand differences, and we can get different experiences. And it might sound very utopian, but in this way I also do believe that we can contribute to the more tolerant society in this way. Maybe to make it a bit clearer or to clarify that my idea behind this very diversified programmation is not to try to bring something for anyone, because I think in this way you don't do anything for anybody, but rather to accept time we live in and to accept different musics of today and different voices, and maybe to bring also to the audiences some new listening experiences and new perspectives. Although the programs I do cover a pretty wide range of genres and styles and backgrounds, I do have a special interest, of course, and this is mostly in a spatial sound, in a technologies for spatial sound, which would be icosahedral from the Graz Institute for Electronic Music, then 4D sound in Budapest, Acosmonium from Paris, from INAGRM, and all these technologies that can open up not only the audience's minds, but also maybe we are still there to investigate what the potential those technologies have for the future compositional poetics and approaches and compositional techniques. Especially in the local scene. So you should take into consideration that Croatia, this is why I mentioned also the pretty traditional music academy and the very small society. We ended up that we are the only one doing, for example, multi-channel setups. We are the only one bringing some of those voices from the international scene. Because the institutions are not really supporting that to a larger extent. So you could really have like 8 festivals of experimental music and 3 multi-channel studios in Croatia. I mean, Croatia is a very small country with 4 million people, even less. And then imagine how many of them are educated, how many of them working in the art and culture, how many of them in the music, and then in the contemporary music, and then experimental music. So we come to rather very, very small numbers. And this is additional reason why I thought it's really important to contribute to this and maybe try to create some new spaces and open up some new possibilities. How we usually do it, and maybe this is a good example what we did with the multi-channel system. There is one amazing guy in Croatia. He's by profession engineer of electroacoustics. He started his music career as a punk guitarist, but he's in the last 20 years, I would say, the most prominent and the most important figure in the field of experimental music, being that with the role of technician or engineer or composer, author, collaborator, and he's the only expert for these kind of technologies in Croatia. So what I asked him, can we maybe do the workshop for musicians, already established musicians, so it was not for kids, teenagers, what we do on a side, but this was really to give composers and musicians in Croatia a chance to get to know those technologies. It was a 1 week workshop only for 8 persons. Can you hear me? Yeah, sorry. This was the start. Later on, we chose 4 out of 8 of them, and we gave them opportunity to work with this guy, with Gladovic, in his own studio. So to say, get the residency of a week, get his mentorship, and also get commission piece. And then later on, they also got a premiere at the festival Gibanja at the first edition, which was this one. So I didn't only want to bring some amazing international musicians working in those technologies and just showing what they do abroad to Croatian audience, but I rather wanted really to participate and to create some new terrains for our local musicians and composers. So to conclude this, and here I come to one of my, so to say, pile I stand on, is that I'm trying not to be only a concert promoter, but I'm really trying to be a proactive co-creator of the scene. And I find the importance of that for the local scene development. So rather not only to book the concerts, to book the bands and to produce the concerts, but rather to initiate, to motivate, to help our musicians, to put them together with the international artists. So trying to open up the space and the borders for them. Again, because of the local situation and the fact that the institutions are supporting international touring, but it's mostly more classical stuff that they're supporting and don't really feel that it's important to support the field we operate in. And how I work with local musicians, what I find most important is that I'm trying to build a trustful relationship with them. I'm trying to build a truly collaborative relation and approach, especially because there is a huge lack of proper support, not only financial, but rather curatorial and producer support. So to say, help them conceptualize something, help them write a text about their work, help them understand how the audience perceive their music, help them also to develop their compositions. So I'm rather very often with the musicians in the studio, but only in the office, writing emails with them and just waiting to get their work done. I wanted to be a musician back then, but then I understood that I'm just not talented to be a musician myself. Although I finished the piano classes in the high music school, I was a bit frustrated, of course, but very soon, since I started working this job, I understood some of my qualities. It might sound now very pretentious, but I am proud of it. I learned how to be an honest ear, an honest listener to them, who devotedly and carefully listens, and who tries to create and build a capacity to articulate thoughts in words, and in this way to co-create the music with them, translating and articulating the perception of the music and helping them in that way. Listening for me is, of course, at the core of curatorial work. And I mean not only listening music, but listening also musicians, their thoughts, their fears, their hopes, listening to the society, listening to the audience, individuals, and observing. So it's, I would say, sociological and musicological approach at the same time, which I find important if we want to approach curation of the contemporary music this way. I really want. Speaking of listening, for me, the most important thing is that this listening is constructively critical. So I think we have to build, this is why I'm trying to build a trust relationship with the musicians, because I think if we are just gonna clap one to each other and shake our hands and congrats, maybe we will miss some developments. But if we are honest and if we can, after building the trust openly, but constructively criticize and discuss stuff we are busy with, then I think we are really on a good path to create mutual development. And I'm trying to do that also as a curator and organizer, so not only towards the musicians, but also towards the society and the audience. So I'm trying to initiate and to create during the festivals this open atmosphere and open feeling that no one from the audience has a fear to approach me. And I find those moments one of the most precious. After some concerts, when people come to me, one person says like, "Oh my God, this was the best fucking concert in my life," and then the other person comes and says, "What the fuck was that?" And then you can also analyze the social backgrounds, the listening backgrounds. You can also learn a lot out of that. But for me, it's the most important that this is really the open space where we can all openly express our thoughts, our conclusions, our perceptions. Listening is, however, a very personal activity. It happens in our brain, but it's also a social act. So I think it's very important that we can openly communicate about that. I think it's also a great starting point for questioning yourself as a curator. After whatever concert you do, you rethink what was good, what was bad, what can be better, why you consider something good or bad. Is it really black or white? Or what is this whole shady field in between? And this helps me to be critical to myself and try to develop also my programs further. Maybe to conclude, what my passion at the end of the day is, I mean, it might sound a bit simplified, but my passion definitely is to the audience bringing some different sonic worlds, different voices, and to give them another auditive and listening experience. And by that, maybe changing community and society we live in. And I would conclude now here. I could run you through the programs of the festival, but I think it might be boring, especially because we don't have the photos and the videos here. But I'm very happy to hear your questions and maybe to discuss some of my thoughts. If you have some.
Hi. Well, congratulations, it's really cool. It's really nice. I love this approach and everything you think about.
Thank you.
Just looking at this program, there's just one thing that immediately strikes. You have the timings, and the concert times are like 25 minutes, and then there's often half an hour break or plus. Or I'm very curious if this is, well, if that's more a cultural thing, or if that's something that is very purposefully thought through, of being like, we have the time to, after each piece, really have this exchange that you talked about, and how that worked.
Exactly, it was very thought through. First of all, we are being busy with the musics that are not, very often, not easy listening stuff. So we have to give ourselves the time, first of all, to tune in, then to get really this listening experience, and then to have enough time to digest. I think there is no sense to jump from one poetic, one listening experience, one mode, one situation in ourselves, to jump to another one just in order to finish and to squeeze the festival. But I think this is exactly the space where we can then either just by ourselves, just walking somewhere far, and just to digest the music and the content we just experienced, but also to comment on that with other people from the audience. And it works really, really well. So it's not that common in Croatia for other stuff, for other concerts and festivals. However, there are not that many experimental festivals in Croatia. But our audience, I must say, really appreciate that space. It's really space for them.
Like it. And they stay for the whole...
Yeah, they stay. Yeah,
Awesome.
Yeah. It really creates, in that sense, the atmosphere where you came not only for one listening experience, but for more of them, also for meeting some new people, for hearing some new perspectives, having some drinks in between, just enjoying the moment of being together. So in that sense, I think this act of listening as a community act is rather very important.
Hi. So my question is, I'm really curious what's your ideas and or practices about all the people who are not usually going to go to an experimental music festival, people who don't have the education, as you said, the access probably, maybe not the financial capacity means, yeah?
You mean the musicians or the audience?
No, the audience. Mm-hmm. And how to bring them to a festival like that, how to attract them, how to inform them.
Well,
and to grow the audience. Yeah, I know it's a lot.
We are working on that for the last 15 years, and I think one of the methods is exactly this programmation. And in this way, I think we can bring different audiences exactly by combining the small communities that are, I mean, this was exactly my first motivation before establishing the first experimental music festival. It was like, okay, I know exactly the people who go to this classical concert venue to attend some 20th music concerts. And then I know the other group of people going to the underground club to hear some experimental electronic music. And then I know the students that are trying to build some free improv approaches, but they don't really have the opportunity to do that at the academy. And exactly by bringing all of them together and opening up the space, we managed to bring different audiences. It worked in Zagreb well. At the end, I had for some experimental music concerts like 500-600 people in the audience, which is huge for Zagreb. But I think, huh? Not only for Zagreb, yeah. But I think, with the programmation, with the different ways of communication, mouth to mouth, also getting people on board. Also, I got many musicians that didn't have experience in experimental music. I got them on board and I put them together with some more experienced ones. And it was also a lot of educational programs that we did before the festival. Then some artist residencies where we created some new bands and new ensembles. And all of these tiny methods contributed to bringing a different audiences. So yeah, there is no one answer and there is no one recipe, but I think this is why I went around all these, my approaches and attitudes, because I think they all equally contribute to this idea, trying to bring people who maybe have no idea what the experimental music is. The reactions are so far good, but I think exactly because of that, we have to create this very relaxed and open atmosphere where people don't feel like I'm not invited there, I don't understand that. They really feel like I can say I didn't understand that, and or I just don't like this, or whatever of these comments. And I'm trying to, not trying, but I'm really respecting those comments. And then once you establish that kind of relationship as a concert promoter in your small local scene, they also respect you and they appreciate your, yeah, your work and what you're trying to achieve. But it's a heavy job, yeah.
Hi, thank you for your talk. It's really open. Can you talk some more about honest listening, particularly with regards music? You talked. It was great that you talked about listening to music and listening to people talking about music and putting that in the same place. How do you listen? How can I listen to music honestly?
I'm pretty sure you are listening to music honesty. It's honesty in the listening, but what I was referring to is a bit maybe more of articulating and discussing that honestly later on. And this is what we miss in our society, because I mean, there is not a tradition of experimental music in Croatia of that sort. At the music schools and music academies, we are missing the proper feedback. You end up as a musicologist graduating and you have no idea how to write a text about a contemporary music concert, which is for me a huge problem. And this is why I mentioned at the very beginning the old-fashioned and traditional music syllabus, music academy syllabus, because we lack those tools, and the musicologists very often are just afraid to express themselves, and they don't know how to analyze this kind of stuff. They are not even thought to be busy with the experimental music in Croatia. And then you have experimental musicians, being they ex-jazz musicians coming from that scene and then opening up their music world toward free improv experimentation, or people coming from the noise punk scene being interested in creating their own instruments and experimenting in a different way. They feel that they miss music education, and they also miss terminology. They miss a way of analyzing and understanding and trying to articulate those in words. And this is where I found my position, to help on both sides, to translate or trying to demystify the experimental music to the audience, but also trying to help musicians and composers to create their works. And this is something you can do only when you build a real trustful relationship. Then when we are in the studio, then I listen to the piece, and then I write like 10 pages of my thoughts, and then we go through all of this, and then of course it's their decisions, and then we first discuss why I perceive this part that way or this way, and this is then the moment, you know, when you work in the theater and then you have a dramaturg analyzing how the scene works for the outer eyes. And in experimental music in Croatia we don't have that, and I'm trying to be exactly that external ear that can really devote it first to really concentrate on listening once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, how many times is needed, and to openly express what I felt, and then to analyze together with the musicians, and then we go on together further. Not sure if I answered the question, but...
How many hours a week do you work?
Ask my boyfriend who is there. A lot. I don't count. But it was, of course, It was, of course, heavier before when I started. So now my first concert that I organized was 19 years ago, and then slowly I started to be focused and dedicated to the contemporary music. And the first festival I did was 2013. Back then, from 2013, especially because of the political situation and all the struggles we had at the student center, it was really like, yeah, 14 hours a day. But now, of course, it's a bit easier because we already built pretty big ground for the future activities. Also important maybe to mention again that I joined KONTEJNER in 2019 when they were already pretty established curatorial team. Okay, being busy in the other field, but somehow we also joined the forces together, brought the audience again together from different fields. So now, yeah, now it's a bit different. And I'm more tired, so I'm taking my time.
Hello, thanks for the lecture, it was great. I'm also interested in into this honest feedback things. I'm a musician myself, and I sometimes struggle finishing pieces, and also work with like those kind of multi-channel things and blah blah blah. Is it possible that you also share like? I would be really super curious actually to read what you actually write as feedback. So would it be possible to share it somehow? Because I think, yeah, it's a very personal thing also to do, but actually that's something that I guess I'm lacking here also, like just find the right people to have feedback with and discuss the thing. And yeah, you say you're good about it, but how did you when you give feedback, it aims in a direction, and what kind of direction? But because it's almost the role as a producer in a way, and I think it's almost a taboo in a way. In noise music and different practice, you do what you do, and then you're alone, and then when you're ready, and you publish it. And I find this really interesting because, yeah, I don't know much people that would engage into this kind of position, so...
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem to share with you. Unfortunately, I can't do it because I usually throw it away. Because I see it as a working materials, you know. It's similar to, I mean, I don't know, if you're writing the scores, maybe you keep all the versions and maybe you keep all the themes and ideas and thoughts. I don't keep all of them. I just keep some notes, or I just find those papers as a tool for remembering now what we listen, what were my thoughts during the listening, and then to share with the musicians. So I see it as a working material. But yeah, as you said, it really, I mean, it isn't a taboo, but no one wants to do that job. I don't know why. I find it very, very interesting. For me, it's very inspiring, and it's really this position where I at least believe I contribute and participate. And it seems that for musicians and composers, it's really important. And but I'm sure that it comes, of course, again from the listening. Because usually those musicians are also at least somewhat, however open-minded they are still, because they're in their creative process at that moment. So they cannot be in any world external ear. So already being external ear gives you slightly different position. Then being a curator and producer and traveling a lot and listening to a lot of different musics, really a lot of different stuff, it gives you some wideness and openness in your understanding, questioning, articulating, and this is where I find that position. But I think we should have way more, how would we say, collaborators of that sort, because in theater and it's more common. I'm also usually invited to some contemporary dance performances that have live musicians in the show, or some musical theatrical pieces, to give them a feedback about the music and how it correlates with the theater. And since I used to work at the student center was not only the music department I was artistic director of, but it was a very important theater department, film department, and visual art department. And 4 of us, curators and directors of the different departments, we were talking a lot, we were discussing, and I was also producing some music theater pieces. And then I got a lot of knowledge from the dramaturgists from the theater. And I think this is also something that helps me a lot to think about the whole of the artwork, the whole of the composition, the structure, the development, the durations, everything that we sometimes maybe forget about. Yeah.
Thank you. I will maybe give the mic to Andrea for the last question or comment, because we are not in Zagreb. The time runs very fast here.
Okay, thank you. Now, just a small question, maybe technical, but I was curious how the entrance in the European Union affected the way to work, because they are more exchange. I mean, I think it make it more easy some exchange with abroad, maybe more found. So I was curious how, as you witness this big change, if you can say a few words about it.
Yeah, of course, it gave us opportunity and approach to European funds. This is maybe the largest change. But it happened already 15 years ago, because Croatia joined European Union in 2013. And already in the years before us joining the EU, we could have applied as a member within the European Consortium for the EU projects. And the rest, what I find a very good thing is that we don't need the ATA carnet anymore to cross the border with the equipment. But yeah, other than that, no, we collaborated with international artists even before. It was just more paperwork, more bureaucracy, more pain in the ass of that sort. But yeah,
in that sense, it's easier. The choice, I mean,
sorry?
You are still free totally with your choice, or because there are more funds on something?
Yes, we are free. My thought on that is that there are many different. So the Creative Europe, the program by the European Union, and the European Union itself gives a very specific directions and rules of how to play the game. But then it really differs from the project to project, depending on the consortium and on the project leader. And if you have a good project leader, then you are still free to do what you want to do. You just have to frame the activities so that you can report them. But for me, it's always the priority to keep the freedom. If it's not possible, if we recognize in some funds or some programs that we won't be able to keep our freedom, then we just don't apply for that. Because I think it's crucial to keep your freedom in order to continue what you believe.
Okay, thank you, Davorka. I think we can take it as final words.
Yeah.